My name is Jens. I am a Qt developer. I started in Trolltech back in 2005, so I'm pretty much a veteran when it comes to Qt. And I converted completely to Qt Quick development 2 years ago. And I really, really enjoy it, and I hope to share some of that joy with you guys today. So I'm a native Norwegian, if you're wondering where my accent comes from. And, well, that's all there is to say about me, really. Let's get started. So the agenda for today, if I can somehow stop my slides from auto-running, is first we're going to talk a little bit about why you want to use Qt Quick, because I'm sure not all of you guys are convinced yet. We're going to be designing a prototype application, just show how to do it from scratch. And we're going to talk about how to make that into a final product. So let's get started on the why use Qt Quick part. And I'll be short, because I want to do mostly coding on my presentation. So what is Qt Quick? Well, as you all probably know by now, it's a simpler way to create graphical UIs, or I think it's much simpler, and I think you will be convinced after a presentation. It's based on a declarative language, so in some ways it looks more like HTML than code, which means you have to think a little bit differently about how you do your coding. And it's based on JavaScript and CSS, so web developers and designers are already quite comfortable with a lot of the syntax and the concepts we're using. So what are the typical problems with regular development? At least how I see it is that, and I'm talking about non-Qt Quick development, is that you tend to have a long turnaround time. You tend to get caught up in details too early. Your developers tend to hate pixel perfection, or maybe you are the developer and you hate pixel perfection. And the end result looks nothing like the intended design was. So you typically get something from a designer and you try to implement it, but it doesn't quite work. So the question is, how can Qt Quick actually make this easier for your application? Well, Qt Quick will give you instant feedback. You will be able to create fully working prototypes, which I'll get back to later. You'll be able to test your prototypes on actual hardware, so you know how your application will more or less perform on the final device. And while you're doing the prototypes, you have the same design constraints as the final application, which basically means if I'm running on an N8, I know pretty much how many objects I can push on the screen at the same time with my N8 prototype. So let's get started on the prototype. So, okay. I've been trying to come up with a simple idea because, I mean, we can't do everything. This is just a 45-minute presentation. So my idea for what we're going to make for this presentation is a Flickr application. And does anyone here not know what Flickr is? I guess not. It's just this image sharing website. You can log on and you can share pictures. So I made a beautiful logo for this application, and I call it Picker. And the idea is that you're going to be able to search for images on Flickr and type in a keyword, and it's going to just show up a list of images. So that's the basic idea for our application. So next logical step here would be to make some sort of sketch. And you tend to do this on paper, and you can put it up on a whiteboard or whatever. You draw a sketch of what the application should look like. And the first rough sketch of my application is something like this. That's what we want to make. And I guess you can all sort of understand how it works. There is a small text input at the bottom. You type a search term. For instance, you can search for cats. You get up search results. You click on one of those images, and it expands into full screen view. I hate this Microsoft PowerPoint thing. Okay. So anyway, that's just the sketch. Now we're done with that. So we send that to our designers, and we ask, can you make this pretty? Unfortunately, I did not have a designer available, so it might not look pretty. But anyway, that's what we get back. Oh no. I just added this for the entertainment, right? It's intentional. So basically, as you can see, it's the same application as the sketch. We just added some nice pixmaps to it. So what you have here is this little, it's just done in, well actually this is done in Inkscape. You could use Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever, it doesn't actually matter. Unfortunately, I use Inkscape on a Mac, which means it's a little bit suboptimal, which you'll see in a second. But it's at least free, and anybody can use it. So yeah, that's the application. How do we start breaking this down into a working prototype? Well, the first thing is to recognize that, I mean, obviously this is 2 screens. So we're going to have to split this application into 2 states. And the way we do this is to set that the initial state of our application should be this one. I just call it the initial state. this square just indicates what should be on the screen. We should just have a list of image results, and there should be a text input. You can type search results. You click on something, you enter a view state. So that's just the logical build of my application. It has 2 states, and we'll reflect that in our Qt Quick application. So let's just get started. Is there a shortcut? Can I press a shortcut here? Okay. Well, thankfully, we'll not use PowerPoint much more. So done with PowerPoint, and I'll just start on an application skeleton. I choose new file or project. I choose a Qt Quick UI because that's like has no C++ involved. This is for prototyping, so it's just going to be a quick mockup for now. I select this. I make sure to put it in my presentation folder. I'll give it a name, and I'll call it Flickr. And continue. Done. So there I have my application skeleton, which is just a hello world application, which is declarative. So I guess how many people have not seen Qt Quick at all? As in this is the first time you see it. Okay, then I'll quickly explain what you see here. So what you see here is that we have declared a rectangle. And most rectangles are white, all rectangles are white by default unless you set a color on them. This is the width and height of the rectangle. I center a text item to the center of it, and the text on that is hello world. So this is declared. It does not happen from top down. I just declare that there is a text item, and it's anchored to the center of my rectangle, which is called parent here, because this is the parent of the text. And the mouse area fills the entire screen, and when I click on the mouse area, it quits the application. So if I run this, you can close it. So that's the whole application, text, the center, hello world. So that's just what Qt Quick looks like. Get used to it. And next step, we have this beautiful image file that I got from my designer. And unfortunately, the gamma on my screen is a little bit off. So, yeah, as I said, Inkscape is working a little bit strange on Mac because it's not really a Mac application. So it has this weird tendency, if I have a very small screen, to not actually show on my screen. This is very typical, isn't it? There you go, beautiful. And I open my application, Flickr, and I zoom out because my screen resolution is a little bit suboptimal for this view. So that's really all there is to it. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to export and slice some pix maps. And we just work with this raw data right here. So I'll start by saying I'm going to need this line edit. So I'm just going to take the background of that and export this as a pix map. We make sure to go to our Flickr folder. Actually, I need to move this presentation right there. This is the project we just created. I create a folder called images, and I give it a name. So we just give that called edit.png. It's the name of the background for my little text input right there. And I press export. So now we have exported that one. I want to make sure that we export the toolbar. So we just go in here and make sure it's called toolbar.png. And that's the toolbar. And I want to export maybe one of these thumbnails, but actually we can find a different thumbnail from the internet. It doesn't really matter. What should I search for? Just give me an image. Troll. Excellent. So hopefully safe search is on. That's an ugly troll. No, too ugly. Well, actually, that's okay. So we'll just use this as an example image, and I'll save this image into my presentation folder, into the Flickr. I'll save it there. And in Inkscape, yeah, actually, did I give it a name? Did anyone get what I called it? It's a horrible name. Let's just save it as troll.png inside my images folder so I can find it more easily. Troll.png. Yes, no, actually use JPEG. Okay. Please remind me that I use JPEG extension because I tend to mix up these things later. Okay, so that's just an example image. And this little spinner image here, I think we need as well. So we'll just take that. And I'll give that the same treatment. Go into Flickr, images, spinner.png, which we'll need eventually. Save that. This little back arrow. As you can see, I mean, I'm not doing magic here and just taking each part of this image and splitting it up, making sure it ends up in the right location. Images, and this is called back, save, export, the little forward arrow, and it should really remember my settings by now. And we call this forward.png, export. And I think that's it, unless I forgot something. Let's just quickly look at the folders we have created, the files we have created to see that we are complete. We have back, we have edit, we have forward, we have spinner, we have toolbar, we have troll. One more thing I need. This is actually, there's a gradient here. I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen, but it's a subtle gradient here, so this looks a little bit like a button you can press. And that's intentional. So let's export that one as well. And we call this item.png because it's a list item. So I just go into here, Flickr, images, call it item.png. So that's it. I think I'm done. I don't think there's many more graphical assets I can use in here. Let's go back to our QML project and get started. So the first thing, everything I do here is going to happen in just one file. That's of course not how you would develop an actual application. So just to prove my point, I'm going to create the little text input as a separate component just to see how that works. Because it's not magic at all. So now I just removed my code. I just have a blank rectangle. I will create a new component, which basically means I will create a new file. It's a QML file. I'll give it a name, make sure it ends up in the same place as other things, and I'll call it text field. Continue. Done. You can see it's just an empty rectangle right now. So what does this mean in practice? Well, basically, I want the text field. If you go back to our illustration, well, I exported this thing called edit.png, which I want should be the background of my text field, which means that the parent item here should be an image. And the source should be images back.png. You can see Creator actually auto-completed that for me.
Not that.
What?
Edit.
Thank you, thank you. I have an attentive audience. This is beautiful. And please keep me in check because I tend to do these things all the time. That's what makes the presentation so exciting, isn't it? So when I actually run this, I would have seen it when I ran it. So, you know, I was just trying to prove a point, but yeah. So this is how my beautiful text edit looks like right now. It's not very nice. You can almost not see it, actually. The first thing you will notice is that it doesn't scale very well. And if you're thinking about resolution independence, you might want to use your line edit in more than one context. So if I make a really large line edit, I don't actually want this border to grow with it. You can see the pixels at the top there. And there's actually a neat trick in QML for that. It's called a border image. So if I create a border image, I can define the pixels that I want to preserve when scaling on each side of my image. So I just say border.left should be 5 or 4, border.right should be 4, border.top should be 4, and border.bottom should be 4. It doesn't really matter at this point. It depends on the artwork you make. So I run it again, and you can see when I stretch it, the border doesn't actually grow. So it keeps the borders sharp, and it only stretches the center part of my image. And this is very useful if you're making reusable components that are used in different applications and places. So quite easy. But of course, I can't enter text here. So I want to need something to enter text. And there is a built-in primitive in Qt Quick called text input, which does precisely that. And what I have to do with this, I fill it to the parent, and I can do anchors.margins just to make sure it doesn't fill all the way over my border. I'll give it a margin of 8 pixels. I'll do a font pixel size of 20 pixels, and just see what that looks like. So let's run it. I can now type in text here. I think the height and the width is not very beautiful at the moment, but I think there is some sort of minimum constraints on my window. So there, it's starting to look pretty nice. So okay, let's just pretend I'm happy with this result. Can I use this in my application right now? Remember, I just created a file called textfield.qml and constructed this little construction. Let me jump back to my main application called Flickr. How do I use it? Well, it's nothing magic. It's basically a text field. I create it, I do an anchors.center in parent to make sure it shows. I show it, and there it is. That's how all there is to making a reusable component. So now I can type in this like any other sort of text input thing. So that's pretty simple. There's one problem though, and that's something that the API of text field does not actually have a text property. If I try to set the text to, for instance, cats, it won't allow it because there is no text property on text field. The thing is, I have to go back to my text field, and there is a text property on my text input. I give it an ID input, and I say that I want to forward property alias text to input.text. That basically means that I want to forward this text input property to my reusable component. So I go back, I can now set the text cats on the text field. So that's basically what I wanted to show about reusable components. It's very easy, it flows naturally like this. And now of course I can make as many text inputs as I want. I can just, for instance, put them in a row, column, just to organize it, and then you can do it like this, and you have 2 text inputs. So that's it. Okay, I'm done with my text input. Let's get started on the application. Well, my mobile application should have a different resolution, and we're going to use anchoring, so it's sort of resolution independent, but just to have a perspective on a resolution, I'm going to try to see if 360 times 500 looks roughly okay. And that's exactly what we can fit on screen, so that's what I'll use for the presentation. Okay, so what's the first thing we want to do? Should we work on the toolbar first or the list? List, okay, we start with the list, thank you. So how do I create a list in QMO? Well, there's a thing called listview. So just do an anchors.fill, or actually I can just set that the width. Now I can say parent.width, or I can give my root item the name screen. And I prefer to do the latter in this example. So I can say the width of the list view should be the same as the screen width, and the height should be the same as the screen height. And I won't anchor here for a reason, which I'll get back to later. So right now, if I show this, you won't see anything, because the list view by itself is not actually visible. In order to make the list view visible, you have to create a delegate. And the delegate, as you might imagine, if you remember from that picture we created, which I can't show because my Inkscape is acting up again, it's the background item, the item that I exported from the PNG. I wish I could leave this on somehow, but we're just going to make one of these delegates. So to do that, I say that my delegate is supposed to be an image. I could use a border image here, but it's not actually necessary because I don't have any hard lines in my graphics. I can just scale the whole thing. I say the source is images item.png, and if you open the file, you will see that the item is just this gradient background that you almost can't see at the projector, unfortunately. So right now I have a delegate. I need to give it a width and height. And I'll just say screen.width, or I can say parent.width here. And I say that the height is 80 pixels. So now I have a delegate. But I have no data. So there's many ways you can create data. You can create dummy data by creating a list model and put a list element inside it. And you can give it an ID model or list model. And I can say that the model should be list model. Now I have exactly one item. You can hardly see it on the projector, but you can see there is a subtle shading gradient there. But instead of creating dummy data, I'll just do the thing quite quickly and just say that we have 20 items, because that's enough that I can actually flick this list up and down. So that's some pretend data. And the next thing we want to do, we want to add our troll image to the delegate. So just throw in an image, and the source is images troll.jpg. And it should be anchors to left, to parent.left, so I anchor it to the left side of my delegate. And I can say that the height is parent.height. And we see what that looks like. Oh, that's pretty ugly. So I can say that the width should be parent.height as well, so it's square. Right, 80 pixels. You can just use width and height as the same argument. So that's left aligned. That's actually pretty good. So there are my Flickr troll images. Next thing, we just want to put in a text item. So this should just contain the name troll.png or troll.jpg or something. So the text should be, or a troll, or an ugly troll, something like that. We just anchor to the left of my image, which means we give the image an ID. We call this thumbnail. And we just say that the left of the text item is thumbnail.right. And we say that the we run that, we see there's a troll. I see I want to vertical center it, and I want to tweak the fonts a bit. So let's use the same font we used for the other thing. We say font.pixel size is 20 pixels. And we say that the anchors, vertical center is parent.vertical center. So I just anchor the center of my text item to the center of its parent. So now, that looks pretty good. And we can tweak it a bit more. So the next thing we want to do is this little forward arrow, which I called forward.png. So any questions so far? Good. It's very easy, isn't it? I'm just doing it as I flow. So just slow me down if I'm too fast, but this is, it's just fun. So I create another image. And this is the forward arrow, so that's, of course, source, images, forward.png. We anchor this to the right, of course, and to parent.right. And we also anchor it vertically centered. Otherwise it looks top aligned, which is a little bit ugly. So I just copy this vertical center anchor like that. And I actually think it should be a little bit indented from the side, so I can use anchors.right margin should be 20 pixels. Looks pretty good. If I have a very, very long text string now, I think I run into a problem. It starts overflowing. So you can solve that by saying that the my text item, or we can call it title, anchors.right should be anchored to forward arrow, should be anchored to the forward arrow dot left. And I can set an allied mode. And we can set text, I think it's called text allied mode. It's just allied, thank you. Text.allied middle. So now you can see it actually fits nicely in there. So just basically, I'm painting here. I'm just painting on a canvas. So okay, let me just remove this extra garbage I added. I think I have a pretty nice flickable view right now. So let's create the toolbar. And the toolbar, as you remember, I exported a pixmap. It's just this thing called toolbar.png. So again, I could create an image. In this case, I will create a border image because I might want to keep the shadow or something aligned. So I just create a border image. I'll anchor it to the bottom. And I'll say that the source is toolbar.png. Thank you. I'm just doing this to keep you awake, right? But is it so easy that it's boring to look at, or are you actually enjoying it? Because it could be like everybody has just like, oh, this is totally obvious. But it's supposed to look easy. I'm not getting much feedback here. So okay, the height of my toolbar. Let's see how that looks. Well, we have like half the toolbar down there. It doesn't go all the way over to the side. So let's just stretch it a little bit. We say that the anchors.left is parent.left and anchors.right is parent.right. And the height is, let's say, 80 pixels. There you go. That's a pretty nice toolbar. You see it even has a subtle gradient shadow there. So quite nice. And what did we want to put on our toolbar? Yeah, you want the back button, and we want the text field, the little search field. So let's just throw in our search field. And then we just use the component we already made, anchors.
I have a question, please.
Yes?
Why don't you make the toolbar a separate component?
I told you in the beginning, I want to keep as much in one, yeah. She was asking, why don't I make the toolbar a separate component? And which is an excellent question, because that's why I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to keep everything in one file, so I don't lose you. Because if I have many files and I jump back and forth, my experience is people don't really know what I'm doing. If I keep the toolbar in one file, that's why I showed you how to do the text field. But of course, you should keep the toolbar in a different file. But in this case, the toolbar is just an image. In some cases, a component is so simple, there is simply no reason you want to reuse it. So that's up to you. But anchors.center in parent. And there you go. My little text field is right in my toolbar parent. It looks a little bit ugly right now, so I'm just going to change the sizes a bit. I think the height should be maybe 60. And I want to do anchors dot. And you can probably notice that the text field looks a little bit like it's not actually centered. The reason for that is part of my toolbar is a shadow. So we need to compensate for the fact that part of my image is a shadow on the top, and there are some translucent pixels in there. So we can say that the anchors dot vertical center offset should be a few pixels as well. Oh, that looks hideous. I should put the height on my toolbar. Yeah, now it looks more or less centered. Okay, a few more pixels, 5 pixels, and I want to do a width of 200. Yeah, okay, that looks pretty balanced. So, okay, there's my text input field, and it's already getting pretty far on just making a UI from scratch, like without having any pre-made components. Question?
So how would you change all the sizes, font size, and so on at runtime, maybe on some condition? Would you use JavaScript?
Well, I mean, I showed you all of these bindings are just properties. You can bind them to a Qt property in C++. And in C++, all of these bindings, if you bind, for instance, this font, you can do something like font.pixel size. Of course, now I don't have a font property on my text field because I didn't forward that. But you can say that font pixel size is runtime.pixel size. And then that's actually something that comes from C++ or from a different part of your application. You can change that at any time. That's the beauty of these declarative bindings. I mean, you can bind them to anything and change it whenever, and everything will just magically update. So yes, that's very easy. Okay, we want to do one more thing with our prototype before we have a working prototype. We want to be able to click on something so that the whole view slides over and exposes the image. And the way we can do that is by creating 2 states, as I mentioned initially. So what I want is to create a full screen that you don't see right here that contains the image. I click on it, and both should slide over to the left. So how do we do this in Qt Quick? Well, there's many ways to do it, but I'm just going to show you the simplest way, I think. And that's by taking this list view. As you say, it has the exact same proportions as my screen. So I'll call this list view. I will create a new component that is exactly next to my list view, which contains the image. And to group things exactly after each other, we have a convenience thing called row. I could just anchor it to my list view. But if I put things in a row, they will always be after each other. So the first item in my row is the list view, and the second item in my row is, you might be able to guess it, is an image. And the size of my image, what should the size of my image be? Screen, exactly. So we just say that the width is screen.width, and the height is screen.height. And we call this ID, we can call this image view or something like that. And let's just put a troll image on that one as well for the time being. It's a prototype after all. So there you go. Of course, right now you won't see it because it's actually to the right of my list view. So you need to somehow move it over. And in the beginning, I showed you how to use a mouse area. And what we want to have clickable here is actually the delegate. It's that beautiful little graphical button that we created with the forward arrow. So how do I do that? Well, I create a mouse area on my delegate, anchors.fill parent, which basically means fill the whole delegate so that each one of those list items has a mouse area. And I want to do something on clicked. But this is the thing. I want to change my state. And that basically means my application should have 2 states. So how do I create a state in QML? Well, let's go back to our root item. We create states, and we create a new state called the view state, and it has some property changes. And what do I want to do in the state? I said I want to see the new image. I basically want to slide the whole list view over by screen width. That's what I want to do. So that's exactly what I'm going to try. As I said, I put my list view on an image in the same container. I'll call this screen container or layout or something, which is just a row. I'll say that the screen layout should have its x coordinate moved by what? Simple math. Minus screen width, beautiful. Okay, so that's my state. So let's go back to my mouse area. What I can do now is say that my screen's state should change. On-clicked, screen.state should be set to the view state. So let's see if something happens when I run my application and I press an item. Boom. That's my new state. And you didn't see a beautiful transition there. Obviously, you're expecting to see a beautiful transition. It's possible. We'll make one. So I still have no way of getting back. But to make a transition, you go back to the states, and you create transitions. There should be some sort of nice little template here. And I don't care about the from and to, but I want a number animation with target, and my target should be screen layout. The property I want to animate is the X property. The to value I don't care about because I set that explicitly, and the duration of my animation should be 500. Let's see what that looks like. See that? That's an animation. And it looks a little bit static right now. I wish it was a little bit smoother. So to do that, you can use easing curves. And one I like is just to use easing is easing.out cubic. This is up to your designer's preference. I think I'll have to do some line changes here so you can see what I'm doing. And there we go. Well, that's actually not very beautiful.
Don't you need a semicolon after the easing?
No, you don't actually need semicolon in Qt Quick as long as you have a line change. You only need them to separate between items. So that's actually up to your preference if you like to use it or not. Some people think it looks cleaner without it, but this is essentially the same as I do here. But I mean, the animations are basically something you can choose to your own liking. If you want it fast or short, yeah, that's pretty fast. Yeah, okay, so that's enough tweaking on my properties. I want to be able to go back, so I said we were going to create a back button, and I think you're getting the basic idea by now. We put our back button on our toolbar, which is an image. Source is images, back.png, which we already created. Anchors to the left is parent.left. Anchors vertical center is parent.vertical center. And the anchors left margin is 20 pixels. See what that looks like. Not bad, but again, I think it looks a little bit off-center, so I'll do an anchors vertical center offset 5, just like I did for the line edit, so it actually looks visually centered as well. That's pretty good. So I click on this, I want to be able to go back. So of course, all I have to do here is create a mouse area, again. Anchors fill parent, so the whole image is basically a click area. On-clicked, we basically do screen.state, and this might not be intuitive, but as I said, there is an initial state, and the initial state is just the empty state, which means how all the properties are defined in my QML file. So it basically just sets back the screen coordinate to how it started. So I go in here, click on this, I click back, beautiful. It's that simple. And the last thing I want to do is to tweak a little bit the translucency of these, because I don't want to see the back image in my initial state. So what you can do there is you just go to our little, we go to our back button, and we say that the opacity should be 0 when you start. So I started, now it's completely invisible. And I say as a property change, I add a property change in my view state, and I say that the target should be the back button. Of course, I forgot to give it a name, so I need to call it ID back button. I go up there and I say that the opacity should be, of course, completely, should be 1. So the opacity should be 1. I test that, I click on something, you see the back button suddenly appears. Again, we want to animate, we might want to animate it. There is actually a shorthand notation, like it can be quite cumbersome to do this every time you want to do an animation. There's actually a shorthand notation for just wanting to animate a property. What was it again? Can somebody remind me? What?
Behavior.
Exactly. So some people have actually done this before. Behavior on opacity should be a number animation. So this is just a shorthand notation for doing that state I just did. I tend to prefer this. And now you can actually see it fades in and out without me having to do anything. So it's just an easier way of animating a property. And I can do the same for the text field, because there's no point in having the text field in the view mode. I could even do it on the toolbar if I just don't want to see it in the view mode. So I do the behavior on opacity for the text field as well. I'll call this search field. I go back to my state and I say I want another property change. I want that my search field should have opacity 0 in the view state. So I go back here and you can see I toggle between the back button and the text field. And if you look at this, I think we have pretty much a complete prototype at this point. So let's see what happens if you actually put this on a device. And this is where anything could go wrong. And I need to go to my folders. Actually, you can just show back my desktop for a few more seconds so I can show what I'm doing here. I'm just going into my N8. I have a QML directory on my N8, and I just have some old code there. Let's ignore that. We go and find our project files in Finder somewhere, and that should be in my projects folder, presentation, Flickr. I just copy this. I go to my N8. I go to my QML folder. I paste it right there, copying some files. Done. Okay. And now I should unmount this thing so I can actually access this on my phone. It's the only cumbersome part of this, because I forgot to do this the first time, and then it won't let you access the files. So anyway, I detach this. Can you see my phone now? Okay. I'll need to open my phone. So this is just a standard Nokia phone. It's running a QML viewer. This is an app you can download. I just Googled for it and downloaded the package for Symbian. It was that easy. I go into this thing, I browse for the QML folder, and there's the example I just created. I press on it, and there you go. Fully working prototype. Pretty nice, isn't it? But that's not all. I said I would tell you about how to make an actual application as well. So let's go back to our presentation. The thing is, so far we have been using fake data. So how can you actually start to use real data? And I'm of course talking about Flickr. So can I get my PowerPoint up and running again? There you go. So the thing is, we have been using fake data. And what we want to be able to use is real data. And I'm going to tell you about something called XML list model, because it was really mind-boggling when I first tried this and saw how easy it was to actually just connect Qt quick to different web APIs. So basically, as you may or may not know, if you have seen or done web development, is that pretty much all web pages are driven by these huge HTML, XML languages like JSON, like Atom. And I can show you a concrete example of that. So I'm just going to show a concrete example, because we are going to fetch this source URL right there. I'm just going to show you how a web API actually works. I paste this into a web browser. You can say api.flickr.com, and I'm asking for the photos feed with tags cats. So that's the property you can change. And if I do that without actually putting quotes around my string, you will get back something that looks like this, which is not very readable. But this is the raw data that most web pages feed you when you're trying to make one of those APIs. And I've tried to distill this into a slightly more readable format. So what it actually looks like in practice is something more like this. Can you still read it at this size, or shall I maximize? I'm a little bit terrified for the applications. This thing just runs by itself. But so that horrible web page I saw you looks a bit like this. You have RSS at the top, channel, and then item. And then you have actually lots of these items repeated. And the thing is, there is a language that allows you to parse these things more easily and just feed this directly in as models in Qt Quick, which is the XML list model. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the XML list model to ask for the title tag and the image tag of each one of those Flickr images. So let's see what this looks like in practice. I'm just going to cheat a little bit and copy my list model directly into my application. So I paste this thing right here. It's an XML list model. I call it list model. And the source is this exact URL that I pasted into Google. It still says cats, hard-coded, which we'll of course fix after a while. The query is for everything that is inside the feed/entry tags. Ignore namespace declarations, just technical details. And we're asking to extract the title property and the image source property from that URL. So that's all there is to it. It's just a few lines of code. It's a very powerful thing to use. So we just go back to our model and we see what happens. And I probably should have connected this to a wired network connection because this is when it really gets exciting. Remember I said model just 20. The thing is now I have actual data. So let's just try to put actual data into it. And the thing, if I just run this without modifications right now, let's see what happens. You just get this thing right. Because what actually happened now is it fetched data from our web page, but we're just using mock data in our delegate. So we need to bind our delegate to the actual data. And that's surprisingly easy. We just go, remember I said that the model extracts a title property and an image source. And we set the model on the list view. So all I have to do, I have to say that the text should be bound to not hrall, that's hard-coded. We just bind it to title. I run this thing, I wait a little bit, and it didn't actually show up anything. That's interesting. Yeah. Wasn't it title?
The ID is also titled.
Yeah, your own ID.
You're binding to your
Oh, thank you. See, again, I love the fact that you're paying attention. This is precisely the type of things that always happened. So didn't I bind something else to title? Maybe I didn't. In that case, I don't need the idea. So let's see what happens now. Boom. We have actual data from an actual Flickr account here. We just need to fix those thumbnails. So I told you that the image was just called, I think it's called image source. So we remove our hard-coded troll image with image source. And one thing you will notice, it's going to be really slow to load. It's going to take some time. And the reason is each one of those images is actually a huge image. But it seems to be fast enough for now. So let's just keep working with this for a little bit longer. I think I just need, I used this title binding somewhere. So I need to make sure that, I think it's okay. It's just that my text's, okay, yeah. I might want to scale my image, but we'll get to that in a second. So what I want to do now, I want to make sure that when I actually press on an item, it also expands the image. So I press on this, I should show the actual image. Again, it's pretty simple. In my onClicked function, I can just write some JavaScript here. And I can say that my image view dot source should of course be the exact same source that we set on the thumbnail. I think it was called image source, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And we just go back here. And we press on an image. You can see the cat is there. It looks a little bit scaled right now, but that's because I have to tweak some properties on image to make sure that it scales correctly. And we can say that the aspect, does anyone remember the properties? I don't have to look it up. Fill mode, exactly. Why are you guys here? You know everything. Yeah, it's just to taunt me, isn't it? Give me a fill mode since you know everything. I don't remember the names of these things. I think it's like crop or something. Does nobody remember fill mode? Let's see if I have installed my documentation. That's unfortunate. I actually haven't installed my documentation. Let's search for QML image. There you go. Fill mode. Click on the enumeration. See what's there. Image.stretch. Preserve aspect fit. Let's just try one. Preserve aspect fit sounds like what I want. And we go back. See what that looks like. Wait for something to load. Beautiful. That looks beautiful. So now you see the aspect ratio is actually correct, which it wasn't last time. Hopefully that's not just accidental. So okay, one thing I noticed is that my images take some time to load. There's two problems with that. One is that you want to see a spinner while images are loading, so it doesn't feel so static. The other thing is that I'm actually loading huge images here. And I can demonstrate that, because if I look on my image source here, go back to my image source, I can say on source change, print image source. You can actually see the output. Just wait for it to load. You can see the output of my images are these strings right here. And very typical with web APIs, at least Flickr, and I know Facebook does the same thing. They have this convention where they have this underscore B, that means big. So obviously there is an underscore S, which means small. So I'm just quickly going to cheat a little bit and say that I want a small image for my thumbnail. So I just do an image source dot replace. Nice. I want to replace underscore B with underscore S, and that should automatically make my images load a lot faster. So let's try. Much, much faster, right? And when I click on it, I don't change the source, so it still gets the high resolution content. That was accidental. I didn't add any search terms. I was searching for cats. Okay, sorry. Speaking of which, I was searching for cats, and I actually want to search for some user input. So I created a text field, right, and I called it search field. So instead of cats, I'll just say search. Oh, did I call it search field? Field search? No, I called it search field. You're just trying to trick me. Thanks for nothing. Search field.text, and of course, you know, the purists here will hate me for not escaping my strings, but let's just ignore that for a second. Hopefully, we won't be able to do any table attacks on the server with this code. So, okay, which means I type a search term here. Okay, what should I search for? Again, troll. And now I get trolls from Flickr. Pretty cool. It's a fully working app. Come on, it's a bit impressive, really. So, I actually don't like the fact that my text is slightly, I mean, this is me being a little bit pixel perfectionist, but let's add some margins to that text because it really kills me. So, let's search for the text item that I created and say anchors.left margin, or just anchors.margins for short, should be 10 pixels. How does that look? Okay, and I think the last cool thing that I could show off is now that we have a fully working application. How am I doing on time? Wow, I'm really well on target. So I just take my phone now, and as you might expect, I shall do the exact same thing I did last time, because the only difference is now I actually have a working application. I connect this through USB, and this is again where everything might go wrong. But you know what you're expecting anyway. So there's my Nokia N8, there's my QML folder, there's my Flickr directory, and this is my current projects directory. Should contain everything that we just did. I copy this in here, and I just replace everything that's on my phone. I disconnect my phone, unplug the USB. Can you switch over? Thank you. And we go back here, and there's the old prototype that we just had. Sorry. We launch the QML viewer again. And we go in here, I find the QML directory, find Flickr, run Flickr, and is it connected to the internet? Oh, there you go. I have a fully working phone application written on stage live in what, 30 minutes? Again, that's pretty cool, right? So basically, my point is, Qt Quick is awesome. Yes. Actually, I think this is basically what I want to show off, unless somebody has feature requests.
I'm wondering, if you rotate the phone, does the aspect ratio change?
Yeah. If I would
if you rotate the phone on the N8, if you change it, everything rotates?
You
Does
mean
that work?
take this? Let's see, run the application again. And launch it. This is funny because you're asking me sort of an unexpected question and I don't know the result. So let's see what happens. We are using anchoring after all. So let's wait for it to load. I tilt it over and then we see if something happens. Boom, there you go.
Cool.
Really simple, isn't it? And the fact that we used anchoring means that everything, I mean, of course I could do some changes because you can check the aspect direction and you can have a different state for it. But that's how simple it is.
But the errors are away.
What about the errors? Is it?
The errors to the right side.
Yeah, probably.
You didn't see it on the project.
Or it's also the projector.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Is there a bug? Yeah, this is actually one thing. Because I'm testing this on the device, I now notice that my click area for this back button is really small. It's very hard to hit. And this is the perfect example where you would go back in and you would change the margins of my mouse area. And as I said, I just anchored the margins to the back button. But are you saying that, again, I didn't actually see the bug because I was looking at you. So what's the problem? It's in portrait? Or
So now you see the arrows to the right.
yes?
The triangles, right?
Yeah.
Beamer that's
If
wrong.
you switch it over,
No, it's your beamer.
It's my beamer on the phone.
Only on that screen there.
Okay.
You don't see the...
Well, you're looking at the wrong screen. You can see it right there. It looks perfect. And that's the guy to blame, not this one. So that's actually what I want to show off. I mean, as you see, I mean, working with Qt Quick is basically just like a canvas. You just start working, and I mean, the fact that there's not necessarily using components from scratch, you can make like buttons and these things just magically appears on screen in front of your eyes. It's just so much fun to work with. I could actually, what I didn't demonstrate on my phone is that, I mean, you can go in here and you can, well, as I said, my back button is too small. We can go in here and you can type a search term and we can search for cat, and hopefully we won't get any indecent images. There you go. That's supposedly cat tagged images on Flickr. Ship of Doom. Take me as I am. Okay, let's. So, let's see. Maybe I have some sort of summary going on here. Yeah. So basically, Qt Quick allows you to, and don't know. So Qt Quick allows you to create fully functional prototype to test on your phone, to just plug it in as your final UI, and you also have incredibly fun while developing. Now, questions. Yes. Wait. Wait, you need a microphone. We are recording.
If you have a huge number of images, for example, in the order of thousands or maybe 10,000, how the memory will be managed using QML?
Well, it's managed more or less automatically. Only the images you see in the list are necessarily allocated, and then they're garbage collected as you go. I mean, you only load the delegates that are on screen, and you pre-cache some elements in front and after it. Okay. But you don't fetch all of them at the same time. So that you don't really have to think about
even
it.
If I scroll, I mean, too much, the ones which are farther,
yeah,
they will be deleted automatically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all magic. We do the hard part. More questions? So the fact that there's hardly any questions means that you basically understood everything, which is great. There's one question.
Thank you. Obvious question, I'm going to post this example somewhere?
Yes, I think I promised that last year and I forgot. Okay. So, you know, if I'm, but I could probably do it after DevDays San Francisco, so in a couple of weeks I could just post it, because I also did some desktop examples that I think people would be interested in having. But I'm not sure. I mean, we're going to share the videos afterwards, and I think the same web page will have maybe some files directory or something you can go into. But I'm not sure exactly how we're going to give you this. If you want it right now, you can get it. I have it right here. Just come to mine. Maybe I just need to make a huge mailing list. But that's right. You just want to take my source code and start playing with it, right? That's pretty much what the reaction I was hoping for. Go on.
From what I've seen, the language looks pretty much independent from Qt that you're using, the QML language. So do you have any plans to standardize it as some kind of industry standard for other mobile platforms?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. Is B. Lamb here? No. I don't really have an answer on that. I mean, I'm just hacking on Qt Quick, so it would be an interesting thought. But I personally don't have any plans on doing that. Any more questions? No? That's it? Great.